Welcome to iAMradio number 23.5. I'm calling it a half because I don't know if I'm going to post this one or what I'm going to do with it. But what I wanted to talk about, or what I was inspired to say, I just saw a post. It was really beautifully shot, and it was a woman. Hey guys, welcome. Claiming her abundance and claiming these things. And I don't know if you saw the other day, but I had posted a video, it might even still be in my story, about claiming states of consciousness. However, this would be, and also I'm calling this a half because my audience would be much narrower for this than the other topics I cover. This would be if you're already on the path. And what is ironic about spirituality is that you can take it and use it like you would any other Western tool, where it isn't something to go somewhere as much as a process of recognizing what is. So spirituality in some ways, and like the choir, I cannot tell you, for years, I thought that this path would lead me to a place where I wore pretty much like full body leather suit, lived the X-Men life in a mansion with a jet. I thought that's what was on the other side of awakening. No. Oh, no. It ain't like that. Whenever you are, unfortunately or fortunately, when you're thinking about what lies beyond for you on the spiritual path, you're likely thinking using what you know from your conditioning. So you basically take the life that you have now, the life that you've seen on TV, and you clean it up a little bit, and you put a fast car and like a hot chick and some stuff, and you're like, that's what I'm going towards. Oh, no. Spirituality doesn't take you places. It lets you know where you are. It's to here. The destination is to here. So abundance and prosperity. I just saw another meme that was it had some, it was a roughly drawn cartoon, and there was a person laying on the floor amongst papers and a computer, and someone opening the door yelling, "Get a job," and the person on the floor was yelling something about how they're in a spiritual awakening. Yeah, it's something like that. So a lot of people who find themselves on the path to seeing what is real generally don't have a lot of money, and you could come at it from a lot of ways. But if you're asking those questions, something somewhere is hard for you. And I think I did, at least, that I was like, oh, I'll get it, and then I'll wake up and do the Darkwing Duck, or there's a cartoon with a Scrooge duck's backstroking and gold coins, and you think oh yeah, once I get my spirituality on, then I'm set. Oh no. You are already rich. You are already abundant. That is the path. That is the awareness that you're seeking. Yes, that can translate to the experience of money, where you're actually able to swipe the card, buy the stuff. But the point, as far as I can tell, is to recognize it's the end of wanting, because it's the recognition of I am. So that when I talk about healing too, I say be careful with the word, because it tells you there's going to be a better later. And it's not that later you won't have a different relationship to yourself or things. It's not that things won't feel better. It's just acknowledging that what you're healing ultimately is the idea that you're separate from life, and we experience various traumas downstream from that. And it was probably Abraham Hicks or something that says, like, the only thing that you've been traumatized by is the idea that you're not God. And when I say that, I'm getting a little bit ballsier about it, but it was scary for me at first because it's like, oh, well, I'm gonna get burned at the stake again. Just kidding, I don't know if that's true, but there is this genetically held fear of being rejected by the tribe, and then there are compounded fears on top of that, and yet all of that is still a story, and I, in truth, can't know why what is. And hey, yeah, time's an illusion, and so we construct, particularly in healing, particularly in thinking about spirituality with its effect in the future, using time as this linear strip, starts here, goes here, but things don't quite exist like that. And so I put all of that on the table, maybe to save you some time, because or to validate what you already know, in that it's not, spirituality isn't to make you better. It will, by allowing you to accept who you are. Spirituality is coming to be, to me, iAMradio is coming to allow that you don't know how you should be, and that you don't know how things should be, and they are. And in that recognition, ironically, you become free. And so the experience that you would expect to have by coming to have the car, the relationship, the gold coins, and the backstroke pool is available when you recognize that everything is there now. Hey guys. Okay, so what are you hearing, thinking, feeling? So help me see where you're at with this material. Okay, so I wrote for a while today, I'm pretty excited about it, about fear and how that is, good morning-ish, how that is under pretty much everything we do that isn't conscious. So consciousness, or being conscious, is such a funny thing too. It's up there with, like, spirituality. So the yin and yang, we'll do that in a minute. But what's so funny about you, about me, about the human experience is that if you're not conscious to what you're doing, you're not conscious to it, which means you're not aware of it. And that's how most people, self-included, have come to ride around on ponies that are like the high and mighty. Why can't everybody think and see what I see? Then it would work. It's like, well, actually, you have this whole other experience. There's this all this other shit you do that you're not conscious to, and so it doesn't register. And so you come to think like everybody else is crazy. You're not able to see your own. You're not conscious to it. And spirituality, to me, is the practice of becoming conscious to your whole self, to accepting your whole self, again, which is different than be able to attract the man you deserve. Yeah, those are all offshoots of coming to love and accept yourself. So it does occur to me that we're in a vibrational experience at a basic level. I'm sure there are like threads under that and threads above it, but the vibrational experience is kind of matchy, and matchy in a radio station way. Like if you are conscious of being happy, then your radio station that's the song that you hear. If you're conscious of being confident, but it's a little bit more complex because your conscious awareness might be tuned to happy, but your unconscious station might be, I don't deserve to be happy. And so there's dissonance. And so maybe you're happy and then you fuck it up. And then maybe you're happy and they take it from you. Like, there is, from what I found, when you're adjusting your conscious dial, what you're intentionally focused on, behind that is another dial that you're not aware of, your unconscious, and your unconscious tells you what to tune your conscious one to. And the reasoning behind actually carries the belief as to what must be true for you to tune to that. For example, if you're shopping for oatmeal, in some ways it implies that you don't have it. You wouldn't think to shop for oatmeal if you had it. You wouldn't think to tune to happiness if you had it. You wouldn't think to get this or that if you had it. And so there's this conscious part, and this is also where like the spirituality application can be a little trippy. That's like, well, I'm thinking of these things, I'm attracting. Well, why? What do you believe to be true that you would think to try to do that? If you're attempting to attract from a place of need or separation, which means I need this to improve my experience, you can't improve your experience. Your experience is like, it's constant. It is. You can change. It's like, when I say you can't improve it, someone might say, well, I'm sick now. It would be improved if I wasn't sick. And yet the watcher behind it is neutral. And in acceptance of your sickness and not trying to improve it, then you're no longer pushing against sickness, which means then you identify as health. If you're pushing against your sickness, you're saying, I am this. If you weren't that, you wouldn't ask for something different. And that is, from what I can tell, how acceptance is pretty much the name of the game, because when you think to do something because of something, one, you're in separation because you do nothing, but you have the illusion of doing things. And two, you're implying you're not already that. So the best way to think about that, in my opinion, is I don't know if it's the best. Maybe we'll hybrid a model. So the idea of the ocean and the drop, where it's like, look, this drop's separate from the ocean. It's not the ocean, it's a drop. And yet all the drops make the ocean, and what's in the ocean is in the drop. And so you are all things at once. And it's whatever you're conscious of being that you experience. And it seems like consciousness, what you can become conscious of, has a lot of different influencing factors. I've personally tried to transcend some things physically, some with varying degrees of success. And I'd have to do this one. Actually, I'm probably doing it now in some ways. But when I first started to explore these concepts like 5 years ago, I thought I was going to transcend calories. I was like, shit doesn't matter. It's all in my head anyhow. But that was coming from an impoverished place. And I, in fact, was not able to transcend calories. And that meant that my weight increased. However, there is that. So I am a drop. This is a drop. This is a drop. And in theory, and supposedly in practice, some places, you can then call the drop to be any other drop. And as trippy as that might be, it's kind of like Doctor Strange. I didn't see the new movie, or there might even be a movie in the middle, but the one where he first goes to the Himalayas to train. From what I understand about physical reality, and I approach this from a quantum physics angle, I approach this from a bunch of different angles, it's not that far-fetched. It's not. And my point in calling that out is, you as a drop of an ocean contain all that which is the ocean. It seems as though beliefs act as a cap to what you're able to call in an experience. You might say, well, what about my physical body? What about my genetics? What about my brain? Similarly, like going back to the idea of illusion, and I say this probably I say this pretty emphatically, once every few radio broadcasts, iAMradio broadcasts, and that's why this is called iAMradio. I am frequency. I am states of consciousness. Clever, right? It just came to me, but that's kind of like, it came to me is that drop in the ocean thing. Being open to the ocean, I am receiving of information that Shaylee couldn't come up with on her own. And if you study inventors or creators, and they say a lot of the same thing, it's like, it's not my idea, it's God's. It's this field of consciousness, this ocean of consciousness from which all things can be like drawn. So what was my point? I started going somewhere. Oh, so this bicep, solid, right? Nope, pretty much just empty space. We have the illusion of solidity. There ain't shit solid in this experience. Ain't shit solid. This occurs to us as solid at our sense levels, but is in fact also mostly empty space. So we have these ideas of bodies, these ideas of countertops, and it's not that there isn't some reality to it. It's just not quite the reality that we've been trained to work through or work with. And to me, waking up is coming to see that what you have thought so far is real and true is in fact not quite what it seems. And I started this by talking about how, at the onset of spirituality, you might think that you're going to win the human game as you know it using your spiritual tools. But the human game, well, first of all things are spiritual. Even the shit that's like ugly and awful, as far as I can still tell, is still part of the ocean, and therefore not to be rejected either. And that's part of this whole acceptance thing. There's nothing to push against. It's all you. It's all you. So the idea that you'll use spirituality to have a nicer home, or like these things that you've been trained to value, is honestly, like, it was a real buzzkill when I saw it, when I like peeled it out. Again, not to say those things can't be, it's just that your relationship to everything changes when you see what things aren't. You'll never really be able to see what they are, because you'll only still see from your own perspective. And even if you're pulling from the field, you're still translating it through your own perspective. And oh yeah, we're still all a part of the ocean, so can the ocean really contemplate the ocean? But in any case, the systems that, I don't know if I would say support or suppress, but that are a part of the experience that we know are fundamentally flawed in many ways. And they use, and this is what I was writing about today, spheres of influence. Fear drives behavior in ways you cannot even begin to contemplate, because it is so pervasive. And so again, going back to this idea of, will spirituality get me the house that I want? Will spirituality get me the swag that I want? Well, it's like, when you come to see how things are actually connected and where they come from and where they go, the hippie in the field that's like, bro, it's love, makes a lot more sense. It doesn't to our little Western heads, at least mine, which was very driven on an idea of success. It doesn't really make sense to our Western heads that it's like, you can be happy just there in your field. Yeah. The footprint's smaller. You're present to what is. You're not fucking up your body. You're not fucking up anybody else's day. Like, the stimulus that we're accustomed to in this modern world is like, whoa. I've been deconditioning for some time. And when I say I have been doing it, it's more like I've been experiencing it being done. And I'll tell you, I could sit and watch, like, there's a lizard where I work out. I call him Richard. He's got like one of these orange things. Like, if you really sit and look at stuff, it'll blow your fucking mind. There's nothing really to, like, the amount of entertainment that we need is wild when you look at what already exists. This world is a miracle. Like, as cheesy as that sounds, I have a jug of water on the counter right now. There's condensation on it. There's so much that we've normalized to that we don't really, like, look at how beautiful it is. And that sounds crazy if you're not in that place and you're like, well, how am I going to get the swag? Like, what about, will they think that I'm attractive enough if I don't have this? Or, like, am I going to, you don't have time to really take things in. But ironically, what you think you'll do is when you have all those things, then you'll take them in. But there's never enough things. There's not. And yes, there is a baseline of experience. It makes a difference if you have enough food to eat. It makes a difference, seemingly, when you don't have somewhere to sleep. Like, those things seem to... It's like yes and no. It's a yes and no. And I'm not coming at that from, like, a theory, like, lived it, tried it, did it all. It's nicer to have money, to know, like, when you're going to eat, where you're going to eat, and where you're going to live. It makes some of the other things, definitely makes it easier to do the other stuff. But it is, I'd say, I'm grateful that I had that experience before the experience of money. It kind of went like a sandwich. Because, again, until you really reconcile your relationship to things, you sort of think the acquisition or accomplishment of things or people or whatever will scratch the itch that you have. And we all have different itches, and human design is a great tool to explore that. I have a pressure, like, we have these sort of evolutionary pressures. The ocean is trying to grow, and it grows through the drops, and the drops are inspired in different ways. And my drop wanted to do a bunch of stuff. Truly, it wanted to try to control its experience. My drop was like, don't worry, I'll figure this shit out, and then I won't hurt anymore. And I will learn how to be the best, so I will be worthy of love. That's what my drop thought it was doing. But under that was this pressure to alleviate my personal suffering, and the suffering wasn't in the things I thought it was. It wasn't for the reasons I thought. The suffering had been because I thought it should be different than it was or is. And there is, like, emotional pain has a, there's physical experience to emotional pain. There is, there are things that are transcendent of the mind that you experience at an emotional level, at least from what I've been able to tell. And yet the mind creates so much more than that. For example, let's say that you're in a relationship and the relationship ends. That's flat. That's on the ground. That's what is. Your mind might come in and say, like, well, it shouldn't have been, because if you would have done this differently, or they did that differently, or this is bad or wrong because I'm supposed to be with this person forever, and and so you take this thing on the ground where it's like two people are no longer like they're not hanging out anymore, and you can make it this big thing that makes you miserable for years. You can do the same thing about death. You can do the same thing about a failure of a business, a loss of money, a job. You can do it about anything. Where here's the thing that happened. This has changed. And then there's a story that goes on top of it that says why it's tragic. And that story on top is what makes it suffering. The thing itself, it's tough to have someone transition out of your life. It can feel some type of way. You can miss them. Someone posted this the other day, and yes, it's kind of like at a more, scientific level, but there are chemicals released. I can't quote it exactly, but basically the experience of missing someone has a physiological explanation. And so you do have these sensations, but what meaning do you apply to the sensation? And all of that is kind of like this idea where spirituality is supposed to make the things right. But really what it does is make you right. It's sort of right thinking. And right thinking is to be able to collapse all of those stories about who you are, about how you should be, about who you need to be, about who they are, about what happened, and you bring them to the ground and you say, it is. At least that's my interpretation of those things. So I usually, let's see. I'm going to drop that story. I've been talking about it more. I'm going to own it. I'm going to be conscious that I'm actively speaking at the level of my truth. There, great, done. What up next? So had I not owned that was true for me now, because the past is unreal. And the past is unreal for several reasons, but the primary, most practical one is that the way that you remember it ain't right. It can't be. It's from your own personal perspective, through your own biases, and it will be colored from what you look back, like however you look back. It's like watching a movie and then thinking about the rest of your afternoon in the context of that movie. You are in your moment, you see what's around your moment, and then when you think about your past, it's colored by here. And so if what you're experiencing right now is healing and you look back at your past, you're going to see stuff that explains why you need to heal. And it creates this loop and it makes it bigger, so whatever you focus on does get bigger. I asked several wrong questions while I was healing that were right ultimately, because it all is, but it did seem a little longer than it needed to be. And when I'm offering this information in the broadcasts, it's like, hey, you went the long way. There's a shortcut over here. If you want to take it, you can. If you don't, great. But as far as the past being unreal, let's say that you think that you were disrespected by somebody. You show up to your moment and you remember that they disrespected you. And so you carry that memory, that idea to here, and you use it to determine how you're going to act towards them and towards other people so that you don't get disrespected again. But what if in that thing that you're remembering, they had just lost their dog and they weren't being disrespectful? Their feelings were just hurt and have shit to do with you. And so you are using the past, which you perceived to be truth. We're walking around perceiving things all the time, thinking like, it like this, it like that, she think this, he feel that, they said this, it means that. We don't know shit, but we take those things that are colored by our perception, we file them, we show up to our moment, we reference our files, and we make what we could do, this field of infinite possibility, very small, because we have to stay consistent with our files, which aren't accurate at all. So you have this past that you bring to the future through the present by trying to explain what is or what can be or what's right or what's wrong when you don't know. You don't know. And even things that are unfolding, when you use what was to interpret it, for example, people were like with COVID, there was an interruption in what was normal for most people's lives. As a result of this bad thing, many people got space from things they've never had space from before to see them at a different perspective. that seems pretty beneficial, right? And so here's this bad thing that's happening that's actually affording people who are interacting with it in that way an incredible opportunity to better align their lives with things that they value. So here's this bad thing with this great thing that seemed to happen as a result. And this seems to be true of everything. And I have a spiritual teacher who doesn't know he's my spiritual teacher. I might have tried to tell him. He's this brilliant guy who's been telling me stuff for years. And when he first started to tell me stuff, I was like, okay. And then as time progressed, I was like, oh. And he was talking about the middle way when I was all, everything's light. Nope. And it's not that things aren't ultimately life or light. They're not all the ocean. It's just to say that there are, at any given time, you can experience things in like two ways. One way would be like, okay, great, this sucks, but I allow for this to be in support of life. And this is similar to what I presented, I think it was yesterday. So you have this event, and it can be dark if you interact with it as such. Same event, you can interact with it as if it's correct or right. You accept it and you work with it. Completely different experience, same thing. Going back to the idea of past and present. So here I am talking about these things. And for me to be able to do this, I went through a lot of shit. You might call that the dark side of it. At the same time, I got to learn and see all these really cool things that answered that primary question I had around suffering. How do I make it stop? So if I kept the dark side of what I experienced up, I probably wouldn't be sitting here with my light side. I tried to chop off the dark side, but that actually somehow allows for the light side because it all is. And you can't get it right. And that's another thing with spirituality. I kind of split in half as I started to watch myself. And one of the parts that was present to the witnessing had an idea of what right was. And so she sat alongside everything I did and was like, nope, not like God wouldn't do that. Like all these, it was great in many ways, perfect, ultimately, kind of purified me. But at the same time, I believe that, and I use this now when I'm growing, I could have gotten there through love rather than judgment. Because the idea that it's kind of like there's a hierarchy. Okay, well, it's better to throw trash in the can than on the ground. Well, it's better to recycle than put it in the can. Well, it's better to not use it to, so it's like they're different. They have different effects. And ultimately, the idea is to, when you're raising your awareness, is coming to see the low to no footprint. But at the same time, if this is where you are, this is all God too. And if you're standing there judging you, it doesn't help. What you can do is put your arm around your shoulder and say looks like you littered again. Okay. And when you do that, then awareness of the pattern increases because there's not fear or rejection. And the more awareness, it just feels better to act or operate in harmony with all that is. And so it feels better to climb up the chain. And so you don't have to push you up it. The nicer you are to you, the more quickly you'll move because it just feels better. It feels better to take care of your body. It feels better to be kind to people. It feels better to remember that your future self is the same as your present self and to, consider them in your decision making. It just feels better. But if you're in judgment of what you're doing, then you're counter to the objective of feeling good and you stay there longer. So I'm be interested to hear if there's anything that I shared today that resonated. like I said, this is 23 and a half. I was intending to do 24 broadcasts, and I think I'll do another series where maybe I take the same topics and zero in on them a little more tightly. But I am interested in what is interesting to you, and more importantly, practical. I really want this to be, like, I want it to be things that, hello, love to you. I want it to be, it's like, because the nature of thought and understanding an idea, again, is largely illusory. Like, I could say shit all day and none of it's what's true. You can't say what's true. And so if I'm gonna speak, I want it to be like, I want it to be at least useful. And how isn't that counter to the point of spirituality being used for something? Yeah, that's kind of like the paradox of it. It's like, here's the same thing, something that's useful, but what's your relationship to it? Are you doing it out of love? Are you growing out of love? Are you doing it because right now it's not good enough? So when I saw some of that stuff, I was like, then I'll just sit here and wait. Like, there's nothing for me to do. I'll just wait. No, you're growing. Things are changing. You take things in as an experience. It's not really the thing. It's your relationship to the thing. And in truth, it seems like the real, like, destination is here and now in acceptance. And if you're not there and you're not in acceptance, accept that and you'll get there anyhow. That's like the meta level. Whatever you are attempting to do, if you can't do it, accept that you can't do it, and then you win. And from there, it seems like it's pretty beautiful and pure creation. Like, you do stuff that has like low to no footprint, which seems to be my phrase for today. And you do it because you love it, not because you're trying to get anywhere, because you have to. And I'm getting like, I don't know how much I live in that space now, but a lot. And it's really nice. It's a much different life than, again, I thought that I was going to be living. It's a lot quieter and slower and smaller. But because of that, it's actually richer. And again, kind of what I thought maybe existed in those other things. And it's not to say you have to be an aesthetic and live like outside of, conveniences. It's just, again, like, as you climb up the ladder, the conveniences that you select are more holistic. And so what is attractive to you at a convenience level changes, because it's not really that convenient to ultimately like destroy the environment. It's ultimately not that convenient to, not be mindful of your physical system. Like, what is convenient actually changes as your awareness expands and you see more of time and space and self and other. It's a really natural process. And it's just, again, I think love is enough to do it. If you love yourself and you want to take care of yourself, the choices that you make naturally will support you in growth. You don't have to be mad or sad at you. And if you're mad and sad at you, be okay about being mad and sad at you. And again, same destination. There you are. All right. Any questions or comments or stories before I close today? Any thoughts or feelings on this as a topic? Like I said, it's a little, oh no, I dropped that. Okay, so with that story, what I do is create a gap in time and space between me and my power. When I say, I don't do this, but I think I should and I want to, then I take me out of power. I'm not in acceptance. And when I'm not in acceptance, there's fear and rejection, and I lose power. It's a power leak. Whereas if I say, like, this is what I'm doing, great, It'll continue to evolve and change and improve, but this is what I'm doing. I stay in my power of acceptance. And that's like that feeling of like accepting yourself. That's peace. It's fucking peace. And that's what we're trying to get through improvement. Oh, I'll get better and then I'll feel good about myself and I'll be at peace. No, you won't. Did it work for you yet? You know? And again, like the choir, I can't even tell you how much time trying to be good enough for something. Beautiful journey, perfect in its own way. Ironic as fuck, which is, again, I'd say if I had to describe the spiritual path in one word, I think I'd use that one. All right, thanks for coming out. Have a wonderful evening. And if you have any questions about this or any of the other iAMradio topics, let me know.